a lot of grief and a lot of trauma
Uh-huh.
that I think nobody's prepared for, and nobody expects to be within that 1 in 8 or 1 in 4 or 1 in 100.
You're listening to Get Your Marriage On, the fun and spicy podcast bringing you new tools and fresh ideas so that you can be the sexiest couple you know.
About 1 in 8 couples have trouble conceiving. Infertility can become a real struggle for couples, sometimes interfering with intimacy and impacting their sex life. I'm fortunate to meet Sadie Banks, a mother of 1, soon to be 2, who has dealt with years of struggles revolving around infertility and the impact it's had on her marriage. In this episode, she shares what she's learned through her years of struggle and her process of how she's gone through it all, and offers some really helpful tips on how to keep your marriage growing and strong through all your trials, whatever you may be going through. If you or someone you love is struggling with intimacy during infertility, I hope this episode inspires you and gives you hope. This is episode number 55, When Infertility Interferes with Intimacy, with Sadie Banks. Sadie, I'm so happy to have you on the podcast today. I've been looking forward to today for quite a few weeks now. It's great to have you.
I'm excited to be here. Yeah.
So I love your message and your story. You have a business that you've launched that was like, they say, your mess becomes your message kind of a thing.
Yeah.
I love how you're just full of hope, and what you want to do is encourage couples who are struggling with infertility. My wife and I, we've been through 3 miscarriages ourselves, which kind of, and we're not unique in this. Other couples have been. So that's kind of what I want to talk about today. And you're an expert in that field. So thanks for coming on.
I hope so. I feel like I've done a lot of research and, lived it. So it's given me a unique.
Can you tell me like your experience and your story, like what that whole process was like, and all the blood, sweat, and tears?
Yeah, totally. So, actually, I had kind of an idea that we may struggle with infertility simply because infertility, a lot of like things that cause infertility are hereditary. Mm-hmm. And one of my sisters actually, she and her husband experienced infertility as well. And so it was something that had kind of always been on my mind, but I was like, maybe if I say it out loud and say that I'm going to struggle, I won't struggle. And so I remember when we were dating, my husband's name is Parker, I sat him down and I was like, look, I might struggle to have kids. Is that going to be a problem for you? Because that's kind of a big deal. And I didn't want it to be a deal breaker, but I understood if it was. Uh-huh. And so anyway, we kind of went into it just being like, okay, this is on the radar, but, we're just going to hope that it's not. And so we got married, and about 3 months into being married, we were like, you know what? I think we're ready to start trying to have kids. And so I went off birth control, and I started tracking like my periods and trying to figure out when I was ovulating. And if you're new to the infertility world, you pee on a lot of sticks. Uh-huh. And for me, I never got a positive on anything. Like I never got a positive ovulation test, and I never got a positive pregnancy test. And so I was like, okay, this is kind of weird, but like maybe like the birth control is still like working its way through my body, or I'm trying to like, I don't know, maybe it's just going to take a little bit. So I didn't really worry about it too much. But then when it had hit like 6 months, I was like, okay, this is taking a little bit longer than I thought it would. So I went to an OBGYN, and I remember being like, I'm really nervous because my sister has PCOS, and I just feel like that's like part of my journey too, but I don't know. Is there any tests that we can do? And I remember the doctor looking at me and she said, you don't look like you have PCOS, so I don't think it's a problem. Oh. And yeah, that's exactly what I was like. Oh,
you can tell.
Okay. Uh-huh. And so I was like, okay. And so then she was like, come back in about 6 months, because typically if you're under 35, infertility is not diagnosed until after a year of trying consecutively. So I was like, okay. So went back, and after the 6 months, I was like, okay, we're still not pregnant, still never been pregnant. Now I have all the ammo. I can be like,
Yes.
we tried, and now you have to help me. And I just remember them being like, I think you need to just keep trying, and like, don't worry about it too much. You're still young. And I was just like, wait, no, like, we've been trying for a year. Like,
That's not
and
the answer I wanted.
yeah, I would really like a baby. And so I was just so frustrated, and I didn't really know what to do. I didn't know if you could just go to a fertility specialist or if you had to be recommended. And so I kind of just like didn't do anything for a few months. I mean, we still tried, but it wasn't working. And finally, after about 16 months of trying, I was like, you know what? I'm just going to call and make an appointment with a fertility specialist and see if they'll even like let me have an appointment or if I have to have a referral. And so I called the fertility specialist, and they were like, yeah, you can totally come in. Like, and they got us set up. And in our first consultation, I remember the doctor asking, like, why do you think you're here? And I was like, well, I have a sister that has PCOS, and I have another sister that has endometriosis, and I don't know if I have either, but I would like to know. Like, that seems like a big deal. And he was like, all right, let's go check. And I was like, wait, what? And so we went in, and he did an ultrasound, and he was like, yep, you have PCOS. And I just remember crying tears of like validation because the whole time I had just been like, I just want to know like what is wrong. And like, if it's me or if it's my husband or if it's a mix of both, like, why are we not getting pregnant? And if I know, then we can have a path to move forward. And because we just kind of felt like we were turning our wheels, like we're doing the same thing over and over and over again, expecting different results.
Yeah.
And feeling like starting to go a little bit insane.
As like by definition.
Yeah, exactly. And so at that point, we got a treatment plan, and we were able to move forward with fertility treatments and started on medications and things like that. And about a year and a half later, that's when we were able to do, actually, it was 2.5 years later, we were able to do IVF, and then we were able to get pregnant with our baby girl, and she is now almost 2. And then out of nowhere this year, we got pregnant spontaneously. And it's funny because now people are like, well, what did you do differently? And I'm like, I don't know. Like, it just happened. Like, we didn't really do anything different. We just, I don't know. We just got pregnant. And so it's been kind of a wild ride mentally that way, because we thought for sure we would have to do IVF for all of our babies. And here we are, not really sure what we are anymore.
Nice. Okay. Oh,
yeah.
So congratulations, by the way.
Thank you. Thank you.
What a story. So how common are infertility struggles among couples?
Yeah, that is a great question, especially because it's a lot more common than you think it is. And it's a lot less talked about than it's kind of taboo. And I wish that it wasn't. So 1 in 8 couples will experience infertility. 1 in 4 couples will, or 1 in 4 women, I should say, will experience miscarriage. And then there are other things like stillbirth and infant loss and recurrent pregnancy loss that are also like under the infertility umbrella. And so like, it's devastating. Nobody wants to talk about stillbirth or infant loss, but 1 in 100 women will experience a stillbirth, and 1 in 160 couples will experience infant loss. And so that's a lot of grief and a lot of trauma that I think nobody's prepared for, and nobody expects to be within that 1 in 8 or 1 in 4 or 1 in 100.
Yeah. So what are the common types of infertility? Like, what are the common like causes of it, I guess?
Yeah. Great question. So there are things like, I mentioned PCOS and endometriosis. Those are 2 big diagnoses that are often linked to infertility. Advanced maternal age, which it's funny because I feel like advanced sounds like, 60-year-old. No, it's like 35. You're considered advanced maternal age. And so advanced maternal age can cause that. And then recurrent pregnancy loss, cancer treatments can even be a cause of infertility. Anovulation, that's when you don't ovulate. And a lot of the times, like PCOS and anovulation are kind of linked. They go hand in hand. And then, of course, there's male factor. So that's low sperm motility, low sperm count. If they have testicular or prostate problems, any abnormal sperm, things like that can also be causes of infertility. And I mean, the thing that's hard is sometimes you have it coming from both the man and the woman, or like in our case, it was just me. I was the one at fault.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
But or the opposite. Sometimes it's the husband who is quote unquote at fault.
Gotcha. How does this affect the marriage relationship?
I think there's so many ways that it does, because you're so focused on trying to have a baby that sometimes you get consumed by it. And so, for me at least, it was like, I can't give my husband a baby. Like, I know he will be an incredible dad, and that's all he wants in life, and I can't give that to him. And so that there was a lot of pressure and
guilt, probably.
Yeah, guilt is a great word. Guilt for not being able to provide what I wanted to provide him, and provide the life that I wanted to give to him and to have for us, that we had hoped for. And then there's also, there's a financial burden, and
financial burden from treatments and whatnot, you mean?
Yeah. So, IVF, IUI, all those treatments. IUI is intrauterine insemination. And basically that's where they will help you to get follicles or eggs ready, and then they'll insert the sperm into the woman. And that can range from $800 to $1,500 a cycle plus medication. And then IVF can range from $12,000 to $30,000 per cycle. So, I mean, you're thinking about that. A cycle is only a month long.
Yeah, 28 days on average or whatever.
Yeah, an IVF cycle is 2 months, because you have to prepare your body. But every 2 months, you're dropping $12,000 to try and have a baby, and so it becomes this burden of do we want this? Can we do this? And then there's the mental game that you play with yourself, because you feel like a failure, or you feel like you're never going to have kids, and some people never do get to this side of the baby, and so there's so much going on in your life that it almost is like your marriage takes a back seat, because you're struggling so much and trying so hard for this one goal.
Gotcha. So it can kind of consume you if you let it.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And if you let it, does that interfere with changing the meaning of sex? It's no longer about connection and pleasure. It turns into something more mechanical.
Oh, 100%. It's almost I think about those 3.5 years that we were trying. It's very mechanical. Everything is 2-year cycle. You're tracking every little thing, your body temperature, your ovulation, your when your period starts. And then when you start going to infertility, to a fertility specialist, and they give you the treatment plan, there are times when they're like, do not have sex. Between this chunk of time and this chunk of time, do not have sex. It's going to be dangerous for you. I was thinking about this the other day. To put it into perspective, most women will ovulate and release 1 to 2 eggs per cycle. That's very normal and within the normal range. When you're doing IVF, the goal is to get as many eggs as possible. And so they will give you what they call a follicle stimulator.
Uh-huh.
And so your body will just make more eggs and release more, or like they can harvest more eggs basically from you.
Uh-huh.
So when I was doing it, by the end of my follicle stimulators and stims, I had 99 follicles that were growing.
All right.
So not all of them had reached maturity, but I had 99 follicles that were potentially going to be
Eggs.
And so if we had had sex, that would have been a real issue. And when we got, I know, they did the egg retrieval, and then they injected the sperm into, did all the IVF stuff. And we ended up having 11 embryos that were created from that egg retrieval. And so like, that's like 11 potential babies. And so like at that time, they're like, do not have sex because it's going to be that will be really dangerous for you. And so,
dangerous in that you could have a lot of twins.
Yeah. Well, you have the potential.
Octuplets. Uh-huh.
Yeah, exactly. And,
Right.
Your body is not made for that many babies at once.
Yes. Gotcha.
And so like you're given a very specific timetable of when to have intercourse. And another example, when we were doing IUI, they'll do the IUI. So they'll inject the sperm that has been like the sample that has been given to them.
Uh-huh.
And then after your appointment, they're like, okay, for the next like three days, every 12 hours, have sex.
All right.
So it's like, okay, you got to not only have sex, but you have to perform, and you have to like, it's like playing high stakes poker almost. Like you've put a ton of money into it, and now like you have to do your best and hope that it's good enough and that it's going to work, if that makes sense.
Gotcha. Yeah. In the short term, it's probably exciting, but over time, it gets really old really quick.
Yeah, it becomes really monotonous and almost like a chore.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Those that are doing infertility treatments often take medicines that help with hormones, like what you talked about, like the shot that increases the production of follicles and eggs released in your body and so on. How do those medications affect your mood, and how does that affect the marriage as a result?
So I'm going to just put a disclaimer. I'm not a doctor. So I definitely recommend, if you're going through this or you're about to go through this, recommend discussing those different options and side effects for the different specific medications with a doctor. But from my human standpoint and my experience, is just remember that medication is it's going to have different side effects. And so you need to be aware of the possible side effects so that you can avoid and resolve any potential conflict that comes. Because there's this one, it's a wonderful medication. It works really well for a lot of people, called Clomid. And it just makes the woman straight up psycho. Like you just have so many feelings that you can't really explain. And you don't know why you're feeling said feelings, but that's just like one of the things. It's like you have mood swings, and they're like from one end of the spectrum to the other. And so it's just like knowing that is coming from the medication and not from you. That was so much like relief. Because I was like, okay, I am not crazy, but I feel crazy. And so that was helpful for both me and Parker to be able to be like, okay, you're being a little crazy, but it's from the medication. So we're both going to like take a deep breath and like move forward. And I think that is like one of the biggest things, is just knowing what those potential side effects are so that you can know that it's a side effect and not like you.
You mentioned how Parker seemed to be really supportive of you during this whole thing. What a champ.
Yeah, he was a champion. And I think that was something that was so helpful for me, because I was an emotional roller coaster and just had so many feelings that like I couldn't place or name. And so having him be that constant, like solid support for me was really helpful. And I mean, not to say that he didn't have feelings about it, like he definitely had his hard moments, and there were things that were difficult for him as well. And so seeing that side of him was helpful for me as well, because it made me feel less alone in the journey.
Yeah, that's really important.
Yeah.
So if Parker were here, what advice do you think he'd give husbands whose wives are going through treatment like this?
So he's a little bit more blunt than I am. So I think he would say, like, she's going to be crazy. So just like kind of deal with it. And then also like take the time to like feel your own feelings and communicate with your spouse. Let them know that like, this is hard for me too. Or, I remember one time somebody announced a pregnancy, and I had the time to kind of go through that and like work through my feelings. And so I was fine with it, but it was really, really hard for him. And
he was a little jealous probably.
Yeah. Like it's a very normal feeling. And so when he voiced that to me, I was like, oh, like this is our trial, not my trial. Like, yes, I'm the one going through the treatments, but like we're going through this together. And it took me a really long time to realize that like we're going through this together. And so we need to be there for each other. And so I think that is something that is good for both husbands and wives to know, is like, this is you as a couple trial, not you as an individual.
Gotcha. And beyond just you and your husband, like, tell me about support groups, or what else can help women dealing with infertility?
Yeah. So it's kind of funny because I feel like there's like a ton of community in the infertility world. We just kind of all like band together.
Isn't that so cool?
Yeah.
But
great. You also like kind of have to like seek it out. And and that can be kind of hard because you're like, I don't even know where to start. But yeah, most states have like an infertility support group or community. A lot of cities have their own support groups. I know of a few just online. One is, I want to say, Infertility Rally. And that's just a support group where basically
like a Facebook group or something like that.
They do have a Facebook group, and I know that they're on Instagram as well. And I think their Instagram is Fab Fertility, I think. But there's lots of community at Good Grief Journals, my journal company. We really try to foster that community for people to know that, they're not alone, and that the feelings that they're feeling are not abnormal. They're very normal and very valid and real. And so I think that is one thing that couples need to know, is that like you can seek out community because you're not alone. And that was something that was really hard for me, is I felt so alone in our journey.
You mentioned Good Grief Journals. Tell me, how did that come to be?
Because of infertility, actually. So
what is it? And everything. So
they are guided journals. They're prompted journals that have I'm trying to
they're pre-printed journals that have a prompt that you answer?
Yep, exactly.
Okay. So is it like once a day kind of a thing?
Yep. Or, I like to write in mine whenever I am feeling like anxious or a little bit like overstimulated. So I don't write in mine every day, but just when I need it, kind of like an outlet. But they're specifically focused on infertility. We have some for a specific one for IVF. We have a pregnancy one because I was like, oh, pregnancy is harder than I thought it was going to be. And I have a lot of anxiety surrounding pregnancy that I didn't know I would have because of infertility. And then we have a motherhood one, and an anxiety one, and a general grief one. We also have a miscarriage journal because that also goes in with infertility and things like that. And so the way that it came to be was that I was like, I really need an outlet for my feelings because I have so many and I don't even know where to start. And so I was like, I really just want some company to create a prompt journal that I can write about my infertility that's like focused on infertility. And I literally was like waiting for like 2 years for some company to do this. And then I was like, you know what? I can do that myself. And so that was how the Infertility Journal came to be. And then as our journey progressed, the progression of
The other
journals, and
journals.
they just came along and they came to be. And so, yeah, that's how it started, was
That's
because
cool.
I needed an outlet.
I've heard about them before from other people. They seem to be really popular or really
Thank
helpful.
you.
So
I'm
that's really good.
glad to hear that. I hope that they are helpful because, like, honestly, it changed my life. Like, that sounds so cliche to say, but like, I was in a really dark place because of infertility. And so being able to work through my feelings in a journal was really helpful for me.
Why do you think that is? Like, I find that so helpful for myself as well.
Mm-hmm.
Why is journaling such an effective way to help us process and kind of come to
I
peace
think
with it?
because it lets us get everything out. You know, you're literally taking it out of your brain and putting it on paper. And for me, I know that it's like once it's on the paper, I'm like, okay, I'm done with it. Like, I don't need to carry that around anymore. And it allows us to really process those emotions because we're taking the time to really like actually physically do something about it.
It kind of reminds me of the pensive from Harry Potter, where they can take
Yes.
the thought. But this is more not just memories, but this is like emotions. Like,
Yes,
it kind of
totally.
offloads your burden there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Very good.
Absolutely.
Very good. So let's say you're a couple, you've been trying for a while, and sex has just become more mechanical. What are your tips? What can couples do to kind of reignite the passion and the fun and the play that you used to have so that sex doesn't feel like a drag?
Yeah, that's a great question. My biggest tip is to have sex for fun again, like make it fun. And also, like, obviously, if you're doing fertility treatments, pay attention to your calendar and things like that. But when you have the opportunity, have sex when it quote unquote doesn't matter. Because, everybody talks about how your ovulation week is like the most important time to have sex, but like have sex other days of the month. And also, like, reignite the passion with like flirting and going on dates that are fun and that you know, can enjoy one another's company again because you got married for a reason. You're wanting to start a family and like continue the growth of your family for a reason. Like, let that be the reason to connect again.
Okay. I'm putting you on the spot here, but any tips you have on how to flirt or flirt more? Because
Yeah.
some couples that've been married a while, they're like, I don't even know what flirting looks like anymore. Like,
Yeah.
we need reminders on how to flirt for our
Right.
spouses.
Exactly. Yeah, totally. I totally get that because I mean, I remember when we were like trying to like reignite our passion and fun and things like that. And I was like, I feel so awkward.
Oh.
But I think texting is a really great way to flirt and just sending like a little flirty text message or writing a note on the mirror. And expo markers are great because they come off of mirrors. And like leaving little notes in their car or on their desk at work, things like that, just so that they know that you're thinking of them and that you love them. And another example or idea is to remember what you did when you were dating. You wanted to talk with them, you wanted to spend time with them, and you wanted, you sent the good morning texts and the good night texts, and you kissed before you went to bed or before you left each other. Do those little things again because that was what ignited your passion in the first place. And so being able to go back to that and really focus on that is a big thing for me.
I love what you just said, because I think oftentimes our actions flow from our like emotion, right? Like, I feel like kissing you, so you go kiss. All right, I can't get you out of my mind, so you're going to always text each other. Yeah. But sometimes it works the opposite way from my experience. You can do the action, and then the emotion sometimes will follow. So you can, like, instead of waiting around for the feeling and then acting, you can act first, and then the feeling sometimes will follow. So just start doing something.
Yeah, totally. Well, and so I mentioned this before we started recording, but I went to Amanda Lauder's retreat, and she talked about how most women actually need action before
desire.
before their desire comes. And so that was a big eye-opener for me. Like, you have to take the action. And so I think that is something that people need to remember, is that desire will follow, but you have to take that initiative.
Cool. All right. Well, before we leave, is there any other tips you want to share with us? Any tips to make the marriage great, to make sex great, to help you through infertility or anything like that?
Yeah. My biggest tip is have fun and have sex. Remember that sex can strengthen your relationship. It's not just to make babies. And sometimes it doesn't make babies. And so you need to remember that it has more purpose than just reproduction. And so have fun with it and use that as a way to get close to your partner.
Great. If people want to reach out to you, what's the best way for them to find you?
We're on Instagram at Good Grief Journals. We're on Facebook at Good Grief Journals. And our website is goodgriefjournals.com. So any of those places, that's where we hang out. And
Great.
We have a podcast too.
Oh, very good.
Great podcast. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Thanks for having me, Dan.
We hope that you enjoyed this episode of Get Your Marriage On. And if you did, we would love it if you would take a few seconds to give us a rating on iTunes and to share the show with your friends. They'll thank you for life. Once you've done that, you can head over to getyourmarriageon.com for more resources about today's topic and to download our amazing marriage apps. Now go get your marriage on.